Broadcasting from London, Ontario, Canada. Welcome. I'm Kevin Bulmer. This is Journeys with the No Schedule Man. We are celebrating and sharing our true selves and stories. A fantastic story to you today about me and C. The creator of that, Carolyn Holdsworth, is with us, and she's going to tell us how she became the printmaker, storyteller, and creative mind behind Me and C. What is Me and C? What you talking about, Willis? Hang with me for just a moment and you're going to find out. But it's Carolyn, somebody that I have never connected to before just a few minutes ago, and whose story I found online by searching for something else. So in London, Ontario, Canada, where we're from, we have a lot of really interesting places. And one of my favorite ones ever since I was a young boy is a restaurant called Joe Cool's. Now, especially if you're a Detroit Tiger fan and you live in this area, you'll know about Joe Cool's, Mike Smith, who created and owns that, along with some other restaurants who I'm hoping I can get on this podcast at some point, by the way. One of the more interesting characters that we have in the city. And I had done a Google search to see if I could find a T-shirt for Joe Cool's. I didn't know if they sold anything like that. And that's how I found out about Me and C. I don't know if Carolyn even knew that or not, but we'll see if that comes up in the conversation. I'm going to bring Carolyn in to introduce to you in just a couple moments. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to the businesses that are making it possible for us to share the stories of people like Carolyn and produce this podcast, including Connect One Consulting. I encourage you to reach out to Gord Fancher at Connect One if you're looking to expand your professional network. Diamond and Gold Treasures out in Lambeth, just to the south of London. Laura Ma out there is just running a terrific business, some of the finest jewelry in the area, also offering jewelry repair, custom design, and layaway. And you can find out more about what she is doing at diamondsgold.com. And as always, I encourage you to connect with Laura on her social media. She's doing such a terrific job of just sharing genuine stories and creating events and just being herself online and growing her business because of it. And a lot of people ask me about, well, how do I build a presence online? What do I say? What do I share on my social media? And one of my recommendations is connect with Laura at Diamond and Gold Treasures and watch what she's doing, and then try your own version of it. She's getting great results and having fun doing it. Thanks also to Susan Iluk of Travel Agents in Action. Susan is certified in special needs and an autism travel professional, as well as a fully T-code certified travel agent. You can find out more about working with Susan at foreverpreciousmemories.ca. I want to say thanks also to Brett Lucier from Provincial Glass and Mirror, a professional full-service glass company owned and operated in southwestern Ontario. And you can learn more about Brett and his team at provincialglass.com. Carol Trickett, you won't meet a nicer person than Carol from Trickett Financial. Providing insurance and investments for Canadians and newcomers to Canada. And you can learn more about what Carol has to offer and connect with her at trickettfinancial.com. And Mo Mondays London, which is the inspirational event series hosted by yours truly. We run these once a month here in London, Ontario, Canada at the London Music Club. I'm quite proud of it. It's like TEDx meets The Tonight Show with maybe just a little bit of The Muppet Show tossed in. We usually have 4 different speakers or storytellers, plus myself, all sharing a little story of life and or work and what we've learned in an effort to uplift, celebrate, and share with each other. Also want to let you know that the Mindset and Marketing Mastermind community that I host is open to new members. We have ongoing discussion there, support, encouragement, collaboration on people's journey of personal and professional growth. We talk specifically about matters related to mindset and marketing for people in small to mid-sized business. I encourage you to have a look at that at noscheduleman.com/mastermind, and you can find out more and see if you think that that's a good fit for you. Today's guest on Journeys with the No Schedule Man, episode number 98, is Carolyn Holdsworth. Carolyn's got, I think, a really interesting story. She learned to screen print in a one-day workshop, and she felt so energized and refreshed through that workshop that within a year of that time, she started turning it into a business. So she now spends Many of her days documenting life here in London, Ontario, Canada, sort of DIY, do it yourself style through artwork that'll really bring a smile to your face and maybe shake loose a happy memory or two, like the story that I told a little bit earlier about Joe Cools. Did I ever tell you that, Carolyn, that
You
I
didn't tell
first,
me that.
no?
No, I love it. That's great.
Because I think I emailed you through your website that but it was a Google search for a Joe Cools t-shirt.
Yeah.
And it led me to your site. And then I got seeing off the top of my head, I think The Wick, Call the
Yeah.
Office,
Yeah.
some of the other places that you have featured. And I was reading your story and I thought, this is one of the coolest people in the city. I have to talk
Oh.
to this woman. And here you are. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for making the time. It's really wonderful to connect.
Oh, thank you, Kevin.
I wonder if you could tell me the story about that first screen printing class that turned out to be so transformative for you. What was the circumstances that brought you there in the first place?
Yeah, it's I'm going to try and tell the short version of this because I can get going when I talk about it. But I had studied opera when I was in university, so I had this really creative experience there. I was singing all the time, and it was really wonderful. And then I left university and wound up in an office admin job, which was a lot of fun and it served its purpose. But I stopped doing creative things and I really missed it. So I sort of was feeling I wasn't singing anymore. And I was feeling like I needed to do something creative, something I really enjoyed. And I had tried everything. I'd taken, Reiki classes. I'd taken seminars about learning how to be a dog walker. I
Mm.
was exploring everything. And there was an artist in Toronto who created these beautiful shirts that I really loved, and she used screen printing. And so I started poking around for a workshop and found a 1-day workshop by this woman, Kingy Carpenter, who's, an institution in Toronto. She's been doing this for so long. She's zany and fun and so capable. So I was living in London at the time. I drove into Toronto and did this 1 day of exploring and learning something new and just had a great time and thought, well, I'm going to give it a go. Why not?
There are so many questions that I could ask you from
Sure.
that. I could see why you really wanted to effort your way into making that succinct because I think there's a lot to explore there. Um, I want to ask you about the actual process of screen printing,
Yep.
but let's come back to that. The whole idea about really sensing that you weren't really doing anything creative. I'm
Mhm.
really interested in that you were searching around Reiki, dog walking.
I know.
Um, what was it that told you, like, what did it feel like? How would you describe even just that sense of there needs to be more creativity, some sort of expression? What was going on? How were you thinking and feeling that really showed that to you?
Yeah, it was. I felt a little unsettled, and as a matter of fact, every administrative job that I took, I always said when I took the position, this is temporary for me. This is a temporary thing. Really, what I want to do is, you know, be a singer or fill in the blank with something that was a little less on the conventional path. Um, so it's interesting to describe where I was at because I think I was there from the beginning. Even when I took my first administrative job, I knew that I didn't want to be in a 9 to 5. Um, I wanted to be able to an extent, set my own schedule, to be able to do a lot. When I say creative, I mean, it's funny because I talked about creativity and then I talked about dog walking, which isn't intuitive. But for me, when I say creativity, it's very much about being able to create and explore and learn. So even something like dog walking, learning something new, being able to communicate with people in a different way or with animals in a different way in that case. That's something I always really wanted. So I used to bring that to my jobs. I used to bring that to my administrative positions, but always felt that there was more there. So it was like a restlessness. It was sort of a like I had a lot to express and I didn't have the place to do it, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And with the dog walking, I think that's creative. No two
Yeah.
walks would be the same, I wouldn't think. And it would bring, wouldn't it connect you with all kinds of other people, get
Absolutely,
you into
yeah.
the outdoors and all of that.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving that context because that helps to set the stage for where you were and maybe what was going on in your life a little bit
Yeah.
when you arrived at this screen printing workshop up in Toronto that you described. What happened there that
Yeah.
resonated with you so viscerally?
I think it was the first time in a long time that I made anything. So it was the first time that I walked into a room and was sort of given instruction and then sat down and just created something from nothing. And I used to do that on the daily. Every time I opened my mouth as a singer, I was creating something from, that wasn't there before.
Mhm.
Um, so that was, when I say energized and refreshed, it was about being focused on something. It was about, the the atmosphere when I walked in. I mean, when I say this woman is out there, she's just a bundle of energy and she's like creativity incarnate. She makes her own clothes and she screen prints in all of these creative ways. There's so much you can do with this medium, and she's one of those women who'll be like, don't worry about it, just give it a try, just do it. I mean, why not, right? She had no fear. And so being in a space with her, saying, here's my 25 plus years of knowledge that I've distilled down. She had these creative, like, that word's going to come out a lot today. She had
Hmm.
these hand drawn, artistic, step by step posters in her studio. Um, Everything about her space was so different and unusual and wonderful and expressive. And it had been a long time since I was in a space like that.
To what extent did your reaction to all of that catch you by surprise a little bit? And I
Yeah,
ask that through the lens of my interpretation of what you shared is that you were kind of trying things and just allowing yourself to be open,
yeah,
but didn't necessarily expect to be as blown away as you were. How
yeah.
fair is how fair is that?
Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I had been trying all these different things. I was definitely in search mode, but this is the first thing I tried that was going back to making something. Actually, that's a bit of a lie. So I had also tried a life drawing class and felt very similar. Um, but that didn't pan out for me. This was really, screen print is accessible. It's not that it's easy. There's a lot to figure out, but with some really simple instruction and with some really, when I say DIY, it's like the materials that you need. It's not a lot. You don't have to have a big, screen printing carousel. You don't have to have a big, all of this big equipment like a flash dryer and you can just do it with a table and a pad, and you don't even really need that. There's the equipment you need is so little. It was just so easy to pick it up and start doing it. And I think taking away the obstacles of, oh well, I have to, train for a long time to figure this out, or I have to, I don't know, it was so simple.
I wonder if I could ask you to expand on that, and
Yeah,
if you were to treat me as somebody who knows absolutely nothing about screen printing,
yeah,
just to set the context for people for the rest of the conversation about what it actually is and is maybe basic because you can make it almost as silly an explanation of what the basic act of it is
yeah.
so that people will understand for the rest of the chat.
Well, this is no problem because I have no formal education, so my explanation is very basic. So my
Good.
understanding is basic. Um, a lot of people actually that I talk to when I was at the market or when I do this summer festivals, um, they they often are really familiar with screen printing because they did it in school. I don't know what school they went to. Often it was Beale, I think, but it's wonderful that they
Mhm.
did this in school. So, in its simplest form, you're creating some kind of template and then you're pressing ink over it or through it in some cases to transfer your design. So if you think of having a piece of paper and cutting out a shape in the middle, so maybe you cut out a star or a triangle or whatever, and you put the paper down on some fabric or some, and then you pull the ink across it, you'll have ink where you had that open space. That's screen printing. I think it would just be the use of ink to sort of, what would be a good word? It transpose an image onto a piece of paper or onto fabric. I do a kind of screen printing called photo emulsion screen printing, where rather than cutting out the shapes that I want to see on the fabric, I expose a screen. So this is a little more involved, but not complicated. However, I will preface this by saying it is a little complicated to explain it clearly. But you basically take a silk screen mesh and you put it over a wooden frame. I should be like pulling frames from my studio here. So you basically have a frame with an open silk screen mesh pulled across it. It used to be made, that fabric used to be made from silk, which is why it's called silk screen. Now it's polyester, but we don't talk about that. So you have this polyester mesh, and I cover it in photo emulsion. Photo emulsion is sensitive to light. So I have a light source on the bottom. I put my picture that I want to be on the screen on top of the light source, and I put it on transparent paper. So the black ink, it's always black ink that I use onto transparent paper. And then I put my screen, which is coated with photo emulsion, on top of that. As I shine my light source, it goes through the paper, but the light is blocked where the ink is or where my image is. So where my image is, the light doesn't get through onto the photo emulsion. So the emulsion where the light was blocked doesn't harden. And when emulsion isn't hardened, you can actually rinse it out with water. So the look on your face is priceless right now. You're like, I'm kind of following.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready to do it. I'm like, no wonder this inspired her so much. And then this little inside voice is going, is she actually speaking in English right now? What's happening?
What is she talking about? It's so hard to be simple. It's one of those things, that it's so much easier to just do it and see it happen. But I mean, really, basically, you shine the light, the image or the emulsion where your image was does not harden. So you wash it out. And what you're left with is a screen with open mesh, just like your cutout image, where you want your image to be onto the t-shirt. And then you push ink through that mesh. So where the mesh was open, the ink goes through, and that's what transfers your image onto the fabric.
The designs of your shirts, the art, and they are art, immediately caught my attention. I'm going to put up on our screen now your website. For anyone listening to the audio feed of this, that will be unhelpful. So look in the description wherever you're listening to it. It'll be linked in there, but I'll mention it's meandc.ca. A is spelled out AND, so it's MEAND c.ca, meandc.ca, because Carolyn, you've got several examples of some of the t-shirts on your website, as I'm sure you know. I think that will be helpful for people to see, and I encourage people to go and have a look. Given what you just described about the process, what do you remember feeling when you were in that workshop about all of that? I mean, you've described the environment and the person that was running it and the energy, and it sounds like it was a real hive of creativity. But that, to me, from what you just described, also sounds like there's some know-how there. What about that process specifically in dealing with clothing do you think it was that really appealed to you?
Well, so at that workshop, I took an image from a trip that I did. I did an 8-month trip to Europe, and I took one of my photos from that trip, and that's what I used to create my very first design. And I think that's actually more than working with, well, I wouldn't say that. So that's the first thing that really appealed to me is I was taking something. It was amazing to see something that was I felt so connected to, that I had seen with my own eyes and had experiences in, now transferred onto a shirt. So that was the first thing that really grabbed me about this particular medium. And the second was, I mean, related to clothing and putting it on shirts and putting it on, now I have pillows and tea towels. And it's interesting to me because it's usable. So it's artwork. I mean, it truly is. It's artwork that it is not that you're connected to, one, because you have memories there, you have specific memories. So it's not just meaningful to me, but it's really cool to see how meaningful it is to the people that see the artwork. Very similar to you looking for your place joke cools, right, that you loved. For them to see a place where they have these very strong memories is really impactful. But then to know that they can buy something that they can use. So artwork on the wall is beautiful, but I no but there. Artwork on the wall is beautiful. And and I love being able to wear something that I feel that's different and interesting, or being able to have something, that I use in my house, that every time I look at it, it's like looking at art on my wall, but I can use it and it's functional. And that's really appealing to me. So screen printing is cool in that way because you can print on anything.
What was the journey then from feeling that inspiration of the shirt that you made at that workshop
Yeah,
to the let me try that one more time, to the
no problem.
decision, um, I won't even say to focus on London or to start a business, but to have an intention to make more shirts.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, is this something that's rolling through your spirit as you're driving back down the 401 to London? Is this days, weeks, months later? What was that journey? How did it come to life after the workshop?
Sure, yeah. I was ready, after printing my very first design at that workshop. I printed one piece of scrap fabric. I was like, well, yep, I'm going to give this a try at home. And I could
Hmm.
immediately, I thought of about 15 places right off the bat that I wanted to capture in some kind of artwork. And so it was a really fast transition. When I was driving home, I wasn't thinking, am I going to do this? I was thinking, okay, when I get home, I've got to call my dad and ask him to help me build a screen printing table for our house, which I did the next weekend. I think it was within a week, I was at my dad's house and we were building a super DIY printing table and combined light table. So it happened really fast. And then, as life kind of stepped in, we decided to raise a service dog puppy. And then everything stopped for 8 months. I did nothing. I did nothing with my printing. I had
Hmm.
told my husband, I'm going to set up this table in our spare room, but 3 months tops. After 3 months, I'll rent a studio or something. It'll be out of there. And I didn't touch it months. I mean, and now we're talking 6 years later, I think. And so, yeah, that didn't work out. And then, but once we were done with the service dog and we raised that puppy, I had a really good friend of mine and we were sitting over at Milosh and I was telling her about all these ideas I had and that I just hadn't gotten going. And she said, the Four City Flea is coming up in the summer in June. Why don't you sign up and do it? Just do it and make a few designs and get going. And so I signed up for Four City Flea. I got in. I don't remember if it was juried. Anyways, I signed up. I started making designs. I went out and started taking pictures, started trying to screen print at home. There was a bit of a learning curve. It's one thing to learn it, it's another thing to print multiple shirts. And when your ink dries in the screen, and there's just things to learn. Um, I booked a photo shoot. It all happened in a whirlwind. It happened in a matter of weeks. I built a website. It was really extraordinary and it was exhausting and I wouldn't change it. It was so much fun.
There's another crossroads of me flailing around choosing which of those areas do I want to ask about, because part of it is where do you start?
Sure.
Like where do you get the shirts? Like, how do
Yeah.
you know what to charge? How do you
Yeah.
set yourself up to collect payment? If like, it's just, where did you start?
Yeah.
When maybe at the Forest City Flea, I assume that's a flea market type environment.
It was like a market, sort of like the Western Fair market, but smaller version. It was actually a great little event that they did in the parking lot at the London Convention Center. So it was a lot of local artisans, which was amazing for me because I started to get into that world. Um, but once I think for the application form, I needed a website. So I think I started there. I think I emailed him and said, I don't have a website, but let me get back to you. And then so I got my website URL, figured out that whole part, and then realized, oh, I'm going to need some pictures for my website. And I thought, well, if I'm going to need pictures, I better get cracking on the designs so I can print some shirts. Like, it was a very interesting, I should preface all of this by saying, should have prefaced it, I'm not, for someone who had a career in office administration, I'm not always the most organized in my thinking. Like, strategy is not my strength. I tend to be more, I just sort of jump in and do it, which often ends up being more expensive, but it's an awful lot of fun. And so I think I Googled, I mean, Google is our best friend, right? I did so much research on what to charge and how to figure that out. And I had no clue about finances. Fortunately, my husband had a career in corporate finance and teaches accounting at Fanshawe. So, I had some good support there. I hired him as my CFO. We had a little agreement. But so I had some support on the finance side for sure, but it really was just Googling things, trying my best to figure out how to quickly pull it all together. Yeah, Squarespace was that we're in such a wonderful time for people who
Yeah.
are starting up businesses, because there's so many folks out there who are writing about how they got started and who are talking about the resources they used, and there's so many resources, so many, even just starting a website. I had a choice of 5 different web hosts that had pre-existing templates, and I'm not going to say it was easy. It was a lot of work, but a different kind of work than people would have had to go through 10 years ago to do something like this.
At what point in all of this, if it had even happened at this point, did the name of the business come to
Oh yeah,
surface?
that was a whole thing. So that went on intensely for about 2 weeks, because to be able to get my website, I needed to have a business name. And I came up with some random, and I relied on my husband a lot, because I was like, every morning I'd wake up, I'd say, what about this? I think at one point I was considering a name like Chasing Rabbits. And he was like, I don't understand that name. I was like, I don't either, but I really like it. Like, it was, he's very helpful. I'm, out here with all these ideas, and he asks very logical, like, supportive questions to help bring me in.
Okay.
And the name ultimately came for a couple of reasons. I kept wanting to just call it C. And that was complicated, because it's kind of, what is your URL? Is it one letter? That doesn't seem to make some sense. But that was my nickname in university. And as I thought more and more about it, I realized that this was so much about going back to the creative person that I was before I sort of, life took me in this different direction, and this person that I wanted to get back to. So when I started to think about that relationship between myself and who I remembered being, I don't know, 10, 15 years prior, that's where the name came from, me and C. And it made good sense to me. It's problematic in some ways, when people say, well, are you me or are you C? I'm like, well, I'm both, really. It's kind of all about me, this business, which is not at all true. What I love about where I landed with it is, and this was always sort of in my mind, is that when people talk about it, they say, oh yeah, it's me and C, as if it's them and me. which is kind of
Mm.
cool. And that's how the business has really grown. It's become not just about my memories of London, not just about my experiences in this city and in life in general. It's become about how much people identify with that and their own memories. They don't come in going, "Oh, cool, you have some memories of Joe Cool's." They go, "Oh, Joe Cool's is where I lived," and it
Mm.
all comes back for them. And in the same way that this is helping me to connect with myself in the past, this I think helps them to connect to themselves, and the places and the memories that they have there. Because it's always inevitably about the people in their lives. It's someone that they used to hang out with at Museum London, at Joe Cool's, at these amazing places that our city has. And that's a big part of who they are, is who they have in their lives and how they've impacted them. So I don't know. It really is. It's landed in a good place, though it had a bit of an auspicious start. My name process.
I love the story, and everything that you've shared about it, and I can see how people would take ownership over it as well,
Yeah,
and invest in it emotionally. I've always found that no matter what we do, once we express it and put it out into the world, in a certain sense, it doesn't really belong to us anymore. A
that's
singer,
yeah,
you sing and are musical, and you know that if you write a song and then you put it out, you sing it or perform it to five different people, and you'll know what it maybe means to you, but you might get five different interpretations
yeah,
from each of those different people. I'm curious to go back a little bit in the story, Carolyn, and earlier you had mentioned that you immediately had about thought of 15 places. This was back when you were talking about calling your dad for help to build the screen printing table
yeah, yeah.
prior to the raising the service dog. Were those 15 places all London places?
They were, yeah.
Okay, so why London? Why did you resonate with thinking I'm going to focus on London as opposed to? I mean, this is art. You could have done whatever, wherever you wanted. Why focus on this city and some of its landmarks?
For sure. When I was in Toronto, there was an artist. I think I mentioned her earlier. She was the inspiration for this whole screen printing journey for me. And her artwork, her name is Yasmin Louis. Her artwork is of places, not places, really scenes in Toronto. And she's another one. I mean, she's sort of. I think she's extraordinary. She's extraordinarily talented. She has a beautiful um, aesthetic. I really love her work. So it happened that I I had just moved back to London. So I went to school here and then I moved to Toronto for a time. And I really connected with Yasmin's work, I think because it was the place where I had lived. So she had some scenes that were in my neighborhood. And I really, when I moved back to London and I started screen printing, I remembered that feeling and I couldn't really put it to words, but it was like, it was exciting, it was felt like we hear a lot about belonging and how important that is. It felt like I belonged to something. I was like, yeah, that's my neighborhood. And so, there's an artist who made it into a t-shirt. Like, how cool is that? I must
Mm,
be part of something. And so I
mm.
really wanted to do that for London. I mean, there was a lot of local love here when I got here. There, you know, um, so many smaller businesses in London that were really supporting local at the time, not supporting local also, but really speaking to people's love of local and pride about London. Ilber and Goose comes to mind. They had those neighborhood hats that people loved. Pretty Natural was doing some awesome local stuff. So I don't know. It felt like there was already an existing energy around it, and I remembered what it felt like, and I wanted to do that for my city. Also, I think moving back to a city, it was nice to fall in love with it again. It was nice to remember what I experienced here when I was in school. It was nice to learn about new spaces and things that I hadn't explored because I was sort of in university land, you know. Uh, but yeah, I think that was the drive behind it.
It's really neat, and we've already mentioned a few of the places that you chose or have in the time since. What other ones maybe immediately come to mind that were part of that maybe original 15?
Yeah, Prince Al's. Prince Al's was the first one I ever did. I have some good memories of Prince Al's from when I was in school here. Museum London was one of the originals. That's just a space where I love to go. Of course, now I'm drawing a complete blank. Isn't that funny? Prince Al's, Joe Cool's, Call the Office was early on too. That actually, I mean, I had a lot of memories of Call the Office, but that one I started getting requests my first show out. People wanted it, and it's been one of my most popular designs. Um,
Hmm.
oh gosh, isn't this funny? It's I think sometimes like you say, when we create something, we let it go, and so they're not front of mind.
It's you know what happens to me? I'll walk into a music store. Do they still have those? I guess there are a
Yeah.
couple of them. And there I was going to say, well, maybe of a bookstore. Do they still have those? I guess maybe there are a few of them. And then I forget all the bands or the authors that I like. I
Yeah,
walk through the doors and I'm stupid. All of us are stupider.
yeah,
So sometimes that happens when you get put on the spot. I'm not calling you stupid, by the way. I'm calling
that's great.
myself
You did
just.
that. I didn't think more.
Uh, but you mentioned about some of the requests that you were getting
Yeah.
and how popular, for instance, Call the Office as a location has been. Let's jump back into the story about all of the frantic, non-strategic, but very much doing things as they come along, preparation for the Forest City Flea.
Yeah.
Take me in, if you would, Carolyn, into getting there. So for the first time, I'm guessing you're there, you're approved, you've got some kind of a website up, you have your name, you've got some product, and now you're you're going to be open for business and make things available for sale. Look other human beings in the eyes that might actually turn into customers or give you thoughts, feedback, maybe welcome, maybe some not as much on what you're doing. What happened?
I was terrified. I was terrified. And it was amazing. I had all of I had heard, and I had experienced this with my singing, you put something out there and then you just get this panic of like, what are people going to think? And what if I want to say that I'd made 50 shirts. And what if nobody buys anything and they just don't like it? Or what if they think it's too expensive? Or like all of this self doubt. Um, we packed, I had got a tent, like a canopy and weights, and had done some research about what to expect, you know. But it so happens that this Forest City Flea went down in history for the worst storm. So the morning was incredible. The morning was incredible. The people, I mean, I think within 5 minutes of opening, and I had my husband there with me, people were coming in and picking up the shirts and had such a, I've come to see it a lot, but to see it for the first time was amazing, where they had the same feeling that I had seeing Toronto shirts when I lived in Toronto. They picked up a shirt and went, oh my gosh, it's this shirt. Like, I used to go here. And it was such a strong, some people would come up and they'd just be amused that someone would, put London on a shirt. But more often than not, it was a really enthusiastic response to just seeing something that they knew so well. So that was amazing. And it went on until, like, I can't remember the time, but until early afternoon, when all of a sudden the organizer came around to my tent and said, put your tent down as far as it'll go. We're about to get hit. And I'm like, I'm selling shirts. Like, I had no idea. And I was like, oh, okay. And he left, and I turned around and looked, and the sky was black. It was black. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I had friends there with me, fortunately, because we were hit moments later. I hadn't had time to put my tent down. We were on a parking lot. We were on concrete, so you couldn't peg it. So I had one friend holding my tent in the center. My husband and I were holding the top of my tent so it wouldn't blow away. And all the while, my friend was holding her young son who was sobbing because of the thunder. It was extraordinary. And, probably the best thing that could have happened, because it was trial by fire. And I have been much more prepared for weather ever since. But it was wonderful, for things to go bad, um, for the second half of that day and to have gone so well before. I mean, there's so much learning when that happens, and you can do nothing but laugh at it, and it was great.
I always say today's calamities are tomorrow's campfire,
Oh,
or in this case, podcast
yeah,
stories.
that's right.
And I think I really appreciate that you're willing to share, Carolyn. I think it's important for us to do that because it's so easy for us to doubt ourselves or to think that we're not prepared enough or qualified enough or need more approval. Or
Oh, yeah.
you mentioned earlier about how maybe strategy isn't at the top of your list of things that you would view yourself as strong at, but that you take things as they come. And
Mhm.
sometimes we can strategize ourselves to death or into inaction. That what is
Yeah.
they call it, the paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
And I'm over the last while in my life have become a lot more like what you've just described yourself to be, and realized that just about all of the things that I look back upon my life and view as having gone really, really well and been the most rewarding are all things like that, where I just jumped in and then figured it out later.
And made so
Um,
many mistakes, right? Made
yeah,
so many
but
mistakes.
what a great way to learn.
Yes, and it's part of it, and I think the more comfortable you get with that, the more, fulfilling things are, because you screwed up, you screwed up, you screwed up, and then you get it right, and that's amazing. Like, that's what a good feeling, 'cause you had to work for it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I love to problem solve, and I think that's a nice quality to be paired with you know, my instinct to jump in. Um, but yeah, I mean, I could do a whole podcast on all of the things I did wrong, and I'm looking at a lot of them here. I have surplus inventory from when I started, because along the way I changed. I took a different approach, and shirts that I bought that I shouldn't have, but I did, and it's. Y- I don't know. It's part of it, and actually, I think it's the most beautiful part of it is being okay with that to an extent. I still get frustrated with myself. There's no doubt, but the mistakes that we make, and just finding a little bit of peace with that, and still figuring out, learning how to be kind with yourself around that. I mean, I think that's probably one of the most important things I've learned taking on starting a business. Um, all of the trappings that are there, comparing yourself to other people and other businesses, and how much success they've had or haven't had. And I mean, these are such important themes in this, among me and my business friends, social media being a huge part of that. And what I've always struggled with social media, and what feeling comfortable sharing. And I think it's because, well, that's a whole other podcast. We've got at least 3 podcasts that we could do.
Okay.
But I could
let's
go.
do, let's do them all.
Yeah,
I would love to do that. I want to be sensitive to the time.
of
I know
course.
you've got another commitment here shortly. Um, where at the time of this conversation in the first part of 2020, where would you say that you are with me and C, and kind of as best you can guess at this stage of the adventure, what you're thinking about it going forward for the next while? What comes to mind?
Yeah. So we were chatting a little bit before that I've left my booth at the Western Fair Market. So I had been there for about 3 years on the weekends. And I've recently, at the end of the year, decided to close my booth there to make my business a little bit smaller, which in itself was quite funny, because at the beginning of the year, I left my full-time job in order to grow my business. And over the course of the year, resisted and resisted that growth, and was getting caught in trying to strategize. And by the end of the year, I realized it's because I didn't want my business to be bigger. I wanted it to be smaller. I wanted it to be manageable. Um,
What do you mean by when you said, forgive me for interrupting, please,
okay.
Carolyn, but I'm really interested that you said that you resisted yourself. What do you mean by that?
Well, I I would find that I would, set goals and targets and say, okay, well, for example, I really want to have a good approach to social media and marketing myself. If I want this business to grow, I have to sell X number of shirts. And all the way along, every time it came to taking action on those things, I would do more planning. I'd be like, okay, I know the actions I need to take. And then I'd be like, I better think about this some more. Um,
Hmm.
uh, it really resistance is the best word. I felt like it's what I should do, but I didn't really want to do it. And all that kept coming into my mind was make it smaller, make it smaller. And I thought, I can't make it smaller. I just quit my job. Like, I can't do that. And by the end of the year, I decided I had an opportunity to teach at Fanshawe College in office administration. Interestingly enough, everything comes back around.
Hmm.
Um, and so I decided to take that part-time work so that I could alleviate the financial pressure on myself. And as soon as I made that decision, I realized I could make this much smaller. So what I've done is, or what I plan to do over the next year is, rather than my shirts always being available so that I'm always printing, is to condense those times so that my printing is, I have more control over when I'm doing my production. So maybe a few times a year, I'll open my online store for a week. People can buy what they want. If they're on my newsletter, they get access to a special back end page where they can actually do print to order. So have whatever design they want, whereas most people would have access to a selection. Um, and once I finish, get those orders in, I'll print them up and then I'll take a break from printing for a while. So to me, that's just, it's a more manageable way to run the business. It's not uncommon. I think a lot of online makers do that now as well. Um, and then of course, I'll still do the summer festivals, Home County and Sunfest. Um, so yeah, that was my way to make it a little smaller, and hopefully every time I open my store, I'll be able to have at least one new design. So I keep building that collection. I have a list of about, it's got to be 25 requests for different places that are meaningful to me, but also meaningful to other people. So that's my plan.
I love it. I think I would like to vote for a whole other podcast just on that idea of embracing what we want and letting go of what we don't, as opposed to shooting our way into it and the whole resistance thing. I'm
Oh, yeah.
fascinated by that. That's why I stopped you, Carolyn. That's something that's really been kind of front of mind and heart for me as well. What am I
Right.
telling myself I should be doing or wanting or expecting versus what actually resonates with the kind of life I want to live and the sort of expression that I feel good about sharing. Good for you for recognizing and honoring that.
Thank you.
Um,
Well, it's
because I
noisy
think,
out there. It's hard to sometimes it's hard to hear your own voice amidst all of the other voices that we get,
oh
all
boy,
day in, day out.
is it ever?
Mhm.
Um, Carolyn, I think it's fantastic. I really appreciate you and what you're doing. I've lived in London my entire life. I'm 45 at the time of this recording. For a lot of that time, I have been, I don't want to say ashamed, but have told myself that maybe I've missed out
Mhm.
because I'm one of those people that's lived in the same city his whole life. And I found you through the process of kind of healing that and embracing it. I'm doing the kind of work now that's taking me to a lot of other cities. And as I was going about going, no, you know what? This is a great place to live.
Yeah.
I'm raising a family here. It's taken care of me. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of who I am. And as I was starting to really lean into that and look at what are some of the things about it that I would really miss if I weren't here, that are
Mm.
part of what makes me me, that's what led to that Google search,
Yeah.
which led me to you for whatever you think that's worth. And I think it's worth a lot. And I wish you all the best and look forward to keeping in touch. And I'm here, however, I can be another positive voice and a helpful friend. And thank you so much for this time.
Thank you.
I encourage you to reach out to Carolyn at menc.ca, and you'll immediately be able to read more about her story. And you'll also find some examples of some of the shirts and the locations that she was talking about. I encourage you to have a look at that. I think that you'll be absolutely blown away by what you find. Thank you so much to Carolyn Holdsworth from Me&C for joining us and telling us her story. This is episode 98 of Journeys with the No Schedule Man. We're coming up on the century mark here before too long. You can find, or will be able to find, this and the complete archive of episodes on my website at noscheduleman.com. Just click on the podcast page. Alternatively, you can go directly to noschedulemanpodcast.com and you'll find them all there. If you would like to stay up to date on future episodes, theoretically, you can sign up to my email list. I say theoretically because I haven't really been all that disciplined about sending out emails. At least I won't spam you. Maybe I'll hop on my email. It's free and I'll spam you. No, I probably won't, but I'll try to start sending more out to let you know about what's going on. There are all kinds of blogs and videos and whatnot. The Turtle Tribe, my mindset and marketing mastermind community, is there as well at noscheduleman.com. I want to say thank you to Connect One Consulting, Diamond and Gold Treasures, Susan and Luke from Travel Agents in Action, Provincial, Glass and Mirror, Trickett Financial, and Mo Mondays London for the support of the podcast. And more than anyone else, I want to thank Carolyn, and I want to thank you for investing some time in us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Hope that you're taking away something that you'll find helpful to your journey and adventure. And if so, send us a note and let us know what it is. I'm Kevin Bolmer. This is Journeys with the No Schedule Man. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.